All right, let's talk about the gig economy. It's this huge force that's completely reshaping how millions of us think about work. On one hand, you've got this incredible promise of freedom, work when you want, be your own boss. But on the other hand, a world of instability and a fight for the most basic protections. So, what's the real story here? Let's get into it.
I mean, who hasn't heard this pitch, right? Be your own boss, set your own hours. It sounds like the absolute dream, doesn't it? Taking complete control over your work, your time, your income. It's a really powerful idea, and it's no wonder it's pulled in millions of people. But you have to wonder, is that the whole picture?
And that's the thing. The reality is a total double-edged sword. It's this wild paradox, you know? For every person who feels totally liberated by this way of working, there's someone else who feels completely trapped by the instability. So how can one thing be both? That's the big question we're going to dig into. And look, we're not talking about some tiny corner of the economy. 64 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many Americans did some form of gig work just last year. That's almost 40% of the entire workforce. So yeah, understanding this shift isn't just kind of interesting. It's absolutely essential to understanding what work even is today.
Okay, so before we can jump into all the debates and the controversies, we need to make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly is the gig economy?
At its heart, the idea is pretty simple. It's all about short-term freelance jobs, gigs. But the secret sauce, the thing that makes the modern gig economy so different, is the digital platform. Companies like Uber, Airbnb, or TaskRabbit, they aren't just matchmakers. No, they create and control the entire marketplace. They set the prices, they manage the ratings, they dictate all the rules of the game.
So how on earth did this all happen? I mean, this massive shift didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was more like a perfect storm. You had these huge, powerful forces all colliding at just the right moment to create the world we're living in now.
Okay, so picture this. For decades, companies had been using more and more contractors to cut costs. Then, bam, 2008. The financial crisis hits, and suddenly there are millions of people desperate for any kind of income. And right at that exact moment, the smartphone revolution puts a GPS-enabled computer in everyone's pocket. It was that combination, a business trend, an economic crisis, and new technology, that lit the fuse. So what's the engine that allowed these platforms to grow so insanely fast and become so dominant? Let's pop the hood and take a look at how their business model really works.
A huge piece in the magic is something called the network effect, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Here's how it works. The more drivers you have on a platform like Uber, the shorter the wait times are for riders. That better service attracts more riders. More riders means more demand and more money to be made, which then attracts even more drivers. See, it's this powerful feedback loop that just keeps feeding itself, letting these companies get huge super fast.
And here's the other piece of the puzzle, the asset-light model. Think about it for a second. Uber is the biggest taxi company in the world, but it doesn't own a single car. Airbnb is a massive hospitality company, and it doesn't own any real estate. How? Simple. They externalize or push all the biggest costs and risks onto their workers. The car, the gas, the mortgage, the maintenance, that's all on the individual. And that transfer of risk is absolutely central to their power.
So, we've seen the business model, but what's the human impact on the people who are actually out there doing the work? This takes us right back to that core dilemma, that double-edged sword, freedom versus insecurity.
And here is that trade-off, right here in black and white. On one side, the appeal is undeniable. Workers love the flexibility, they love the control. I mean, reporting 76% satisfaction is incredibly high. But the other side, well, it's a harsh reality. You've got these feast or famine income cycles that make it impossible to plan. And over half of these workers lack access to basic benefits like health insurance or paid time off.
And this, right here, really hammers the point home. For nearly a third of gig workers in the US, that flexibility that they value so much comes at a really steep price. They're earning less than their own state's minimum wage. It's a stark reminder that the freedom to choose your hours doesn't always translate into a living wage.
And what about that whole idea of being your own boss? Well, it gets complicated. Because for so many gig workers, the algorithm is their boss. It's a piece of software that assigns them work, it sets their pay, it monitors their every move, and it can even deactivate them, which is basically firing them, often without any human you can appeal to.
Now, all of this tension has, you can imagine, sparked a massive fight for the future of work, and it's playing out in courtrooms and in governments all across the globe.
The central question is, what rights do these workers actually deserve?
This is the multi-billion-dollar question. Are these workers independent entrepreneurs running their own small businesses, or are they employees who are simply being misclassified so that companies can deny them rights like minimum wage, overtime, and benefits? The answer changes everything.
And if you look around the world, there is no single answer to this question. It's a total patchwork. In California, a special law keeps drivers as contractors, but with some new, limited benefits. The UK literally invented a new worker category that's somewhere in the middle. In the European Union has gone the furthest, basically saying workers are presumed to be employees unless the company can prove otherwise. A driver's rights can literally change just by crossing a border.
So where do we go from here? Well, people are exploring some really fascinating ideas to try and forge a new social contract. Things like portable benefits that follow you, the worker, from gig to gig, instead of being tied to one employer. Or creating that third worker category that offers a safety net without killing flexibility. There are even more radical models where the workers actually own the platform themselves, a platform co-op, sharing in the profits and making the rules.
Ultimately, this all brings us to the final, critical question. The technology itself, the apps, the algorithms, it's neutral. It's just a tool. How we choose to use it, the rules we build around it, that is a social and a political choice. So, must flexibility always come at the cost of security? The answer we all come up with is going to define the world of work for generations to come.